I started an improv class because a friend of mine did it. And the way she talked about it, I didn't want to do it, but I had the sense that I should do it. Like there was something there I had to explore. So that was almost 20 years ago. And I went, and it was just so hard to do, but I stuck with it, and it totally changed my life. And I totally stopped being shy and self-conscious. It was super, super freeing. So here I am 20 years later.
What about it makes it fun?
Well, there's a lot of things. One is you're connecting with other people who are in your position. Like everybody's a little nervous in the beginning because we don't know what to expect. And there's also this misconception that improv is about being the funniest, quickest, cleverest, most outgoing person in the room. And it's not. There are improv styles that people do that. But I trained at BATS Improv in San Francisco, and I teach sort of that lineage, if you will, which is improv is about teamwork. It's about listening and responding and allowing the funny to come naturally without forcing it.
When you say it is about teamwork, can you explain that further? Like, how exactly is teamwork a part of improv?
You know, if it were one person, it would basically be stand up, right? But with more than one person, what we have to do is build our stories together. So in order to do that, we have to be open to one another. We have to listen carefully so that we can respond to what they're saying. We have to be willing to drop our own agenda, our own stories. If things aren't going in that direction, we have to be willing to be present in the moment with our partners and be like, oh, this is happening. Okay, I'm going to add to that. I'm going to build on to that. A huge part of it is demonstrating that we can all just be silly together and laugh, and above all, permission to make mistakes. And in fact, a lot of the games, the warm-ups and exercises we do are designed so that we can't easily get it right. We're not putting people in the middle of the room and saying, okay, now be a cowboy or whatever. We're all playing together. It's an experiential thing of being in the soup together. I had a student tell me one time, it's not that I'm not uncomfortable, but now I'm more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
And in your personal experience, since you were shy, you said to start, and now you're doing improv as a career, what was that path like for you, the journey? When did you start to open up and feel relaxed in that kind of an environment?
Well, it took me several years to be willing to perform. You know, when I started, I was like, I'm doing this for me. I'm never going to perform. I'm never going to teach. And one of my teachers, my real mentor, really, Rafe Chase from BATS Improv, he invited me to do a student show with him with some other students. And so that was a few years in, and I did that, and it was scary and exhilarating and all that stuff. But from then on, I just kept performing little by little, and I was still just scared for a long time. But when you do anything repeatedly, you start to get used to it. And I think that thing happened to me where I just got more comfortable with being uncomfortable. The teaching took longer. It was actually a friend of my dad kept nudging me to teach a class. I want to take a class, teach a class. And in the beginning, it sort of ebbed and flowed. Some people would stay and keep taking classes. Some people would leave, and then more people would come. And then people just started staying, and I had to add another class. And then I had to add another class and another class. And so now I have a bunch of classes.
Who would you say that improv is really for? Like, what kind of person out there can benefit from taking improv?
So it feels kind of corny to say this, but improv is honestly for everybody. So you have people who are interested in improv or interested in performing, and that's one set. Then there's people who are curious because they hear a lot about improv, and so they're just curious, they want to check it out, and then they get addicted. And then there's people who are, like the me people who have heard about sort of the life tools that improv can help with, like building confidence, public speaking. So there all kinds of people who come just to sort of explore themselves and what their possibilities are, and what improv might do for them. Because there's an element of starting to get comfortable and okay with making mistakes and trying things. And, we do this thing where if we make mistakes, we go, woohoo, and move on, which you learned yesterday. And it feels silly to do it first. And then after a while, it just becomes really natural. We just say, woohoo, and we move on and we move on and we move on. And so we're building this muscle of accepting ourselves however we show up.
I can definitely say that even going and attending felt like I was expanding my comfort zone. And then being there, my friend walked in and she just started laughing because she could see the anxiety coming off of me, which isn't something that she normally sees. And she just thought that was hilarious. But so if anyone is listening in and they're like, I just don't think that improv is for me, I don't know, they feel skeptical or overly shy, what would you say to them?
Trust yourself. You've all got it in you. And it's not, and as you know from the beginning class, we're not throwing people up on stage to do scenes, right? We're doing games that relax us and get into it. And you start laughing, and that becomes contagious, and you start laughing more. And then you get to know each other. We do some sort of, some things where we're just being human together. What people think it is what I do with my colleagues on stage, right? So we're performing, we're performative, we're getting suggestions from the audience, we're doing short scenes, we're doing full length, what we call long form, full length improvised plays and stuff like that. So that is not what beginning students are doing. Beginning students are playing together. We're not being characters. We're not acting. We're not being performative. At the end of a class, like yesterday, we did a few little performative games for each other, which is not required. Some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. But I think everyone did want to in your class. It's like having a little game night with friends is what it is.
How would you describe the core principles of what you're hoping people who come to your class take away?
The core principles of improv, as anyone who does know a little about improv knows, and those of you who don't, is the phrase yes and. It's what we call making an offer. Anything that somebody does is making an offer to us. And we say yes to it, and then we make an offer back. So we might just say yes, which is great. But if we make an offer back, then we're not putting the onus of the work on our partner. We're giving them something to work with as well. Anybody can take any tools from improv and apply them to their life in some way or another. Improv is largely about trust, right? So there's the deeper we go into improv, the more vulnerable we want to get so that we can really create together. And by vulnerable, I don't mean, oh, I have to sit here and tell you something personal about my life. No, vulnerable is being willing to do what is needed in that moment. So in a scene, accepting an offer and letting go of my idea. Or it might be, oh, this scene requires me to get upset or to laugh hysterically. Who knows? In the workplace, being vulnerable might be presenting an idea or speaking up in a meeting or something like that, and being willing to take that risk. And what that requires is trust within the team. So how do you build trust within the team? We learn to not shut things down. So that's where yes and listening closely, accepting other people's ideas. You may not follow through on those ideas, but let them be valuable. Let everybody's voice be heard and valuable. We do exercises in listening, say, and sort of exploring how do you listen and what kind of listener are you? And that can be really mind-opening for people because they might realize, oh, I do that all the time. I can be a really bad listener and not even realize it. Or for instance, some people might discover there's some things that I do where you can discover if you're a leader or a follower, and to sort of bridge that gap. So if you're a follower, try taking the lead more. And if you're a leader, try following more. And people can really realize how much they wait for other people to do things, so they're afraid of those risks and they want to try more.
It was definitely a self-learning experience, like a self-discovery for me. When we were there, I realized how quickly I jump into my sort of analytical beta brain where I am trying to come up with something witty and quick. But as you were saying, it's not really about that. It's about actually just listening and responding and creating something together with your partner or with your group. And that was discombobulating to the brain
Right.
because when we had to participate in a group, say, storytelling session, and we could only say, 1, 2, 4 words or a sentence, when the story wouldn't go the direction that I was trying to nudge it to go, then you have to quickly sort of recalibrate and think, well, where am I going to take this when my turn comes back around again? It must be good for problem solving. It must be good for these types of situations in life.
Yeah, well, what I like to say is it's not about thinking quickly, it's about getting out of your own way. So, how you're describing how you were in your head, I got to say the right thing, I got to be clever, and as you recall, one of the first things I did was make everybody say something boring. So I really wanted to get out the idea from the outset. We're not here to be clever, guys. We're in fact be as dull as you possibly can, and that in itself becomes funny, right?
Oh my gosh,
So
it was
we had people.
hilarious.
Yeah. So the first thing was say a boring sentence, a boring statement, and then we're all going to support you in that. And so somehow somebody saying, I'm wearing tennis shoes becomes the most hilarious thing in the world because it's so not funny, right? So we really lower the stakes on what's funny to put people at ease. But about that mindset of getting out of your own way is is really key. And so a lot of those games and the things, it's not trying to learn to think fast. It's about getting out of your head so stuff can just come out your mouth, basically. And that's vulnerable, right? Because we're used to being able to control what we say. We're not looking for somebody to slip and say something embarrassing. We're looking for people to slip and say something they didn't know they could say.
When I walked away, I ended up just processing the experience and thinking, why was that so fun? Like it was creative and I just think you got our brains to function in a way that they don't normally in our day-to-day lives.
I think I'm really happy that you got a lot out of it. And yeah, it's kind of an endless exploration. I'm still exploring it almost 20 years in. I have teachers who've been doing it for 40 years. They're still exploring it. So it's sort of an endless experiment in a way. One of the things that it's doing is it's letting us it's taking away our adulting. We're not being childish, but there is a childlike quality to just playing that a lot of adults have lost. And so it's touching back on something really essential. Just play. Play is very essential in life. And laughter is, it's a cliche, but laughter is very healing. I wish I discovered improv younger. I didn't discover it till my 30s. And I think it would have helped me, kind of find my tribe and ease my way through those rough years.
You've said a couple times now how much improv has really changed your life. Can you give us a better idea of what you mean?
It's changed my perception of myself. I feel more me. I don't feel like I'm hiding. I feel like I used to try to be invisible. And if I were visible, I'd want to be doing everything just exactly right before anybody could see it. I'm not self-conscious. If I'm silly or make a mistake in public, it's just really easy to laugh it off and move on. I don't attach to it in any way. It's just sort of, I feel like it was a path for me, at least, of finding my real comfortable nature and liking myself.
If you could only teach one improv exercise for the rest of your life, Which one would it be?
Oh my God, that would be terrible, Anne. How could I pick one? You'd have to do a yes and exercise and learn how yes and gets you so much further in life than yes but. And we didn't do yes but yesterday in class, but I will do it in the beginning class.
Advice for entrepreneurs. So, anybody that's listening in who has a talent or skill that could potentially be turned into a class or an offering, a service, what advice would you give them for launching it?
Let go of that imposter syndrome thing. For a while I was like, well, I haven't been doing this for such and such long as my teachers, but there's a point at which you're good at what you do and you have something to offer. So I feel like when you know, right? But also what really helped me, because it's very much a creative person and not thinking of myself as a business person. I went to the Small Business Association and got myself an advisor. And for small businesses, they're just there to help. It's free and you get a certain number of sessions. And, I just didn't know where to start when I went, into a legal business zone. And so I needed the steps. I needed to know, do I need a license? Do I need this? How do I file this? What about that? And my advisor was just so helpful in demystifying the process for me. So I highly recommend them.
For a final question, if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself when you were in your early 20s, what would you say?
I would say go take an improv class because I would love to have not wasted so much time being afraid to jump into things.